Kim Potter's conviction was a miscarriage of justice. Now, before you judge this video based on that statement, I challenge you to watch this entire video before coming to your own conclusions. And let me know if I've convinced you whether that statement is true or not. My name is Nate the Lawyer. If you are new here, we talk about the law and the facts. If you're about that life, don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. All right, so let's start with just a quick recap of the Kim Potter case. Here is the news media explaining it.
In the immediate aftermath of the traffic stop shooting, a distraught Kim Potter predicted prison for making the deadly mistake, pulling her firearm instead of her taser, killing Dante Wright. 10 months and a guilty manslaughter verdict later, Potter will learn her fate. The former Brooklyn Center cop staring at a presumed 7+ years in prison, though her defense is arguing for probation.
The state was asking the judge to give Kim Potter 7 years in prison, while the defense was asking for probation. Now, 7 years is the normal sentence for this type of crime. Now, the judge in this case shocked everyone and sentenced Kim Potter to only 24 months in prison, which really turns out to about 16 months in prison with 2 months time served. She's probably going to be out in about 14 months and on parole. Now, there's outrage in the Black community and the BLM movement, and we'll talk about that a little later, but this is not about the length of time that Kim Potter got, but why she got any time at all. Now, the most interesting part of the sentencing hearing is that the judge seemingly admitted that Kim Potter was not guilty. And that's a very frustrating piece of this case. Now, Kim Potter was convicted of consciously disregarding an unjustifiable risk causing the death of Dante Wright. And this is under Minnesota's involuntary manslaughter laws. So the question is, what does it mean to consciously disregard an unjustifiable risk? Let me give you an example. Let's say John works at a toy store and John has a gun for protection. Let's say that John has a friend that comes to visit him at the store. John shows him the gun and then points the gun at his friend as a joke. He consciously points the gun at his friend as a joke to scare his friend, right? Hey, the gun goes off, killing John's friend. Well, this is a classic example of reckless manslaughter, involuntary reckless manslaughter. See, John consciously disregarded an unjustifiable risk, that risk of pointing a loaded gun at someone and then disregarding the fact that if the gun goes off, you could seriously injure that person. Now, in this example, mistake would not be a defense. John couldn't say, I mistakenly shot him, right? Because John consciously put his friend in that risk. So essentially, John can't put his friend at this unjustified risk, and if something bad happens, then claim it was accidental. So it's under the law, John committed a crime, involuntary manslaughter. Now let's contrast that to Jane, who also works in the same toy store. Now Jane saw what happened to John. So Jane takes the gun and puts it in a safe and locks it up. Jane is like, I'm not going to be like John. A customer then comes to the store and Jane goes to the toy gun section. Jane grabs a toy gun off the shelf, points it at this customer, pulls the trigger, and bam, customer is killed. Unknown to Jane, someone placed a real gun on that shelf. Jane kills the customer. So is Jane a criminal? Well, see, the major difference in these stories is that first, John knew that he was pointing a loaded gun at his friend. Jane did not know she was pointing a loaded gun at the customer. Jane was unconscious of the risk. Matter of fact, Jane didn't think there was a risk at all. And this is where the defense of mistake does apply. See, Jane unconsciously put the customer at risk. Unlike before, where John consciously put his friend at risk. So under the law, Jane would not have committed a crime, while John would have committed one. Now, let's apply this reasoning to the Kim Potter case. So the key question in the Kim Potter case was Kim Potter conscious that she was pointing a gun at someone, or was Kim Potter unconscious that she was pointing a gun at someone? That's the difference between criminally liable and not criminally liable. So we're going to let the judge answer that question for us. Check this out.
Officer Potter's conduct was significantly less serious than your typical manslaughter case. The misdemeanor predicate for the manslaughter count was reckless handling or use of a firearm. Here, everybody agrees, and the evidence is undisputed, that Officer Potter never intended to use her firearm. She mistakenly drew her firearm at all times, intending to use her taser. There were police officers and experts who testified that the use of her taser was reasonable and appropriate under the circumstances presented for officer safety reasons. The fact she never intended to draw her firearm makes this case less serious than other cases. Second, the scene was chaotic, tense, and rapidly evolving.
So in this case, the judge seemingly has admitted that in this case, Kim Potter thought she was pointing a toy gun or taser at Dante Wright. Just like Jane, who unconsciously thought she was pointing a toy gun at the customer.
Here, everybody agrees, and the evidence is undisputed, that Officer Potter never intended to use her firearm. She mistakenly drew her firearm at all times, intending to use her taser.
That would mean she's not guilty. This is why I believe the judge is struggling with this case. This is the reason why I think the judge was in tears when she was reading this sentence.
Officer Potter made a mistake that ended tragically. She never intended to hurt anyone. Her conduct cries out for a sentence significantly below the guidelines.
This is also the reason why I think the judge gave this woman 2 years instead of 7 years, which is normally given for this crime. And I think even for the broader context, think about the implications of this verdict. Any accident can now lead to someone being criminally charged. Think about a doctor prescribing wrong medication, right? Unconsciously, they write the wrong medication and give it to a customer. Think about a waitress who mistakenly gives someone with peanut allergies a dish with peanuts. Unconsciously, right? I did not know. Now, I understand the race baiters are going to point to Mohammed Noor, right? The black officer who was also convicted of manslaughter. Here is what they're saying about the Mohammed Noor case.
There is an officer named Officer Noor who must be sitting in some institution somewhere in the United States wondering what about him. The distinction that the court made between the Officer Noor situation and this situation is mind-boggling. The quoting of President Obama, the ramifications of this decision go far beyond this case. There are plenty of folks who are now wondering what a black life is worth.
That it is equal justice in America, but when we have sentences like this, it makes it difficult to make those arguments, because wasn't Mohammed Noor trying to do the exact same thing they said Kim Potter was trying to do? He was trying to look out for his fellow officers' safety as well. He was very remorseful as well. But they didn't make a downward departure for the black police officer like they made for this white police woman. And that's problematic to many people of color in America, that we continue to see this intellectual justification to make sure that seems like they get the most of justice and we get the most of injustice.
The question is, what is the difference between the Noor case and the Potter case? Well, simple. Noor intentionally and consciously drew his gun, pointed it at someone, and shot them, while Potter unintentionally, unconsciously drew her gun and pointed it and killed someone. Here's the judge explaining it.
The other officer cases tried in this court are distinguishable. This is not a cop found guilty of murder for using his knee to pin down a person for 9.5 minutes as he gasped for air. This is not a cop found guilty of manslaughter for intentionally drawing his firearm and shooting across his partner and killing an unarmed woman who approached his squad. This is a cop who made a tragic mistake. She drew her firearm thinking it was a taser and ended up killing a young man.
So Muhammad Noor consciously drew his gun, while Potter unconsciously drew her gun. So legally, those cases are different. One has committed a crime, one has not committed a crime. This judge, by sentencing Potter to 24 months, I think accomplished two things. Number one, she made it harder for Potter to appeal. She only got 14 months. And if she happens to win the appeal and they order, let's say, a new trial, then she could get more time if she's convicted again, right? So it's something like, I could get 7 years if I'm convicted again, or do I just do the 14 months and call it a day? And then second, Potter may feel that the 14 months is appropriate, right? She may say, well, hell, even though it was a mistake, I killed this kid and I should punish in some way. And 14 months in prison versus a 20-year-old not being around, I'll take that deal. And she may just do her time and call it a day. Now, at the end of the day, Kim Potter should pay a civil price, right? Or maybe even lose her job. But a conviction for a crime for an honest mistake is not justice. And I think the judge, and I think even the prosecutors know that. So at the end of the day, did I convince you? Do you now understand why Potter should have been found not guilty? If you disagree with me, tell me why I'm wrong. Show me why you think this conviction is legally correct. Now, I know there's going to be a whole bunch of people, Nate, you're helping the white people kill more black people. Nate, you're a bad guy. Nate, why are you doing this? Understand this, people. I'm a lawyer. I care about the law. I care about the process. Do I understand that people are going to be upset? They're going to see white cop, black kid and jump to conclusions? Yes. But the law is clear in these matters. And if you can't understand why a cop who makes a mistake is different than a cop who intentionally points a gun at someone, then maybe we have farther to go. To be honest with you, I think any time this woman spends in jail, that in of itself is injustice. I challenge you to prove me wrong. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'm out of here. Peace.